Thanks, John. Now, back now to gay marriage. And Liam Fox isn't alone in arguing that there are more important priorities for Parliament than this issue. And it's an issue which is now threatening to split the Conservative Party. The government's plans for same-sex marriage are being published tomorrow. But today, the Culture Secretary, Maria Miller, was forced to the Commons to respond to Tory MPs who say church weddings for gay couples will alienate the grassroots and are a distraction in these straitened economic times. Let's go live now to Westminster and Katie Razzle. So, the Culture Secretary forced to come to the Commons. What did she say?
Well, Kathy, Maria Miller was in appeasement mode today, trying to persuade Conservative MPs who oppose gay marriage that they have nothing to fear from this legislation. That, for example, churches that don't want to conduct same-sex unions won't have to, that they'll be protected in law. Now, they weren't buying that today. It was one of those curious set pieces that sometimes happen at Westminster, where she is going to make this announcement on legislation tomorrow, but because it was leaked to the newspapers ahead of time, furious MPs summoned her to the Commons to explain herself, and they, over an hour, just under an hour, they aired the same issues as no doubt they will air tomorrow. And although MPs from all parties did speak out in favour of gay marriage, she was in the firing line from several Conservative backbenchers.
The state has no right to redefine people's marriages. The state has no right to do that.
Could my right honourable friend explain to me why the government is so hell-bent on upsetting so many thousands of our citizens in normal marriages, especially at this time?
Our position remains that we firmly support marriage. It's one of the most important institutions that we have in our country. The government should not stop people from getting married unless there's very good reason, and being gay, I don't believe, is one of them.
Katie, how much of a problem do you reckon David Cameron has on all this?
Well, he's not risking defeat on this issue, Kathy, because it's a free vote for Conservatives, and there are enough Liberal Democrats and Labour MPs who will vote for it to get this legislation through. But of course, he is risking a split with his own party. There are about 100 MPs, including members of the Shadow Cabinet, who don't want same-sex marriages. And they say this doesn't play well with core voters, with traditional Tories. But of course, David Cameron knows that issues that may not appeal to those Conservatives who always vote Conservative, they may well make him more appealing and his party more appealing to people outside, the kind of people that he needs to attract if he is to win the next election.
Katie in Westminster, thanks very much.
Well, we're joined now by the former Conservative MP Matthew Parris, columnist and a founder member of the gay rights group Stonewall. Matthew Parris, I give you these three concepts. Religion, marriage, sex. What order would you put them in when you're dealing with a Tory backbencher?
It's difficult because all three are far too interesting for far too many people. But I think a Tory backbencher, or the wiser ones, understand that as aerated as people may get about these things, they will calm down in due course. People got quite aerated about civil partnerships. Who cares now about that? Everybody thinks that was the right move. People got aerated in 1967 about the legalising of homosexual behaviour between consenting adults over 21. Two-thirds of the Conservative Party voted against it then. Very few people would vote against it now. So despite the potency of those three elements to get people into a great froth on all sides, I think this will be a pretty short-lived story. I hope so.
Well, at the end of the day, therefore, do you see Prime Minister Cameron acting out of real, genuinely heartfelt principle, or as a pragmatist recognising the time has come and indeed he can win votes out of it?
I think that's a question you can ask of much that the Conservative Party does. Sometimes its heart is in it. Sometimes it simply calculates that it has advantage to gain. In this case, I think David Cameron's heart is in it. I've talked to him, many people have, and none of us have come away from those conversations, including those people who are against gay marriage, but with the feeling that David Cameron really does believe that to allow people to make the same commitment in a same-sex relationship as they do in a heterosexual relationship is good for society. He really believes that. But it is also true that he wants to modernise the Conservative Party. He wants the Conservative Party to get in touch with what the rest of Britain is thinking and feeling, the way things are moving, and I think that chimes with that strategy as well. So both of them in the same direction.
Now, intriguingly, when we talked to Liam Fox earlier, he did talk about religion, and quite clearly he and some people in the Tory party really believe there's such a tangle in the law, in our established church and everything else, that is what will stymie this thing.
Well, they're quite right about the tangle. What I think perhaps not 1 in 20 of our viewers realises is that the Church of England is obliged by law to marry any 2 people in a parish who want to be married, regardless. They don't even have to be Christians. They can be devil worshippers. The church has to marry them, and therefore you have to give the church exemptions in cases where it has religious objections. You do in the case of divorce, for instance. The church doesn't have to marry divorced people where one of the partners is still alive, and so it's a matter of giving them the same exemption, and they must have the same exemption for reasons of religious freedom, freedom of conscience, not to marry gay couples if they don't want to, but why shouldn't they if they do want to?
Matthew Parris, as ever, you have shone a torch in some dark corners. Thank you very much for talking.